Hello, I'm Adam Hall, and welcome to another edition of Quantum Insights. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into what is, well, probably one of the greatest problems that we humans have, and that is the ability to effectively communicate with one another. They say that nearly 1/3 of all communication is ineffective. In other words, we're either talking over one another, not listening to one another, and no doubt that is a primary reason why there seems to be so much divisiveness in our current culture and so much war happening on this planet. Could you imagine what it would be like if we could effectively communicate our thoughts, our ideas, our heart's intent with one another? What would that mean for your relationships? How would that impact your ability to be more effective in your work or to find a way to be more healthy and vibrant in your mind? My sense is it would reduce conflict, it would reduce the stress and the anxiety that we have in our lives many fold. And over the years, I've been researching what it takes to be an effective listener and communicator in general, and talker more specifically. You see, my mom always used to say, Adam, you're not listening. And I got to say, I was not a very good listener. But over the years, I began to learn my lesson the hard way. Well, there were lessons, really, I should say. So today I want to offer you some key tips into soulful listening and soulful talking. And before we get started on this, one of the things I want to particularly point out is there's really only two types of listening and talking. And one of them is mono, the other is dialogue. So we have monologue and dialogue. And in the monologue, obviously, we're speaking essentially only to ourselves, even though we may be communicating with someone else. This monologue is driven by the ego, the incessant need of the ego's need to be heard, to be seen, and often to the expense that it doesn't even matter how effectively you're communicating. Because the monologue is not a dialogue in the sense that it's not a two-way communication. Now, I may be stating the obvious, but what's critical here is that we understand the source of our listening and source of our talking. In other words, where are we talking from? And where are we talking to in the other person? Where are we listening from within ourselves? And where are we talking to in the other person? If we're listening from our head, then we're thinking very intellectually, and oftentimes we're actually thinking over what the other person is saying. If we're listening from our heart, oftentimes we can be stuck in our emotions and our deeper psychological state. But if we create a balance between head and heart, we come into a place of what I refer to as soulful listening. So I want to dive in to listening from the heart, listening from the soul, which is a form of dialogue. It's an inner communication amongst ourselves, within our heart and our soul, and it's a communication from our heart and our soul to that heart and soul of another person. It's less about what the other person is saying and their opinion, and it's more about why they're saying it and why it's important to them. That last point is very critical. Why is it important to them? And which allows us to put ourselves in their shoes so we can listen from heart and soul in a dialogue, a fair exchange of energy. So my 4 tips for soulful listening are, first and foremost, quiet the mind, body, and brain. I mean, if we're moving around and our brains are thinking and thoughts all over another person's dialogue, then we're really not in a deep listening place. So we want to quiet the mind, body, and brain. 2, we want to value the other person. In other words, let's have some respect for one another. And it's not about what the other person's saying, it's more about why they're saying it. And oftentimes we gain a lot of wisdom and insights from people that we would not otherwise listening to. I mean, maybe you're on the street and there's a street musician or an artist, or maybe you go attend a talk and you don't agree with what the person is saying, but you pick up 2 or 3 powerful pointers that maybe change your life. So we want to value and honor the other person. 3, share softly your emotions. So if you're listening, you want to be able to feel empathetic maybe. Maybe you're feeling the other person. Maybe you want to smile friendly at them. You want to acknowledge that they're speaking and that you're listening. So share those emotions softly. And lastly, for soulful listening, I'd like you to think about how you can lean into the intended outcome that you want. So if you're listening, for example, and maybe you don't know the outcome that's desired for the other person, but you know that you want to hear them and you want to receive them. Those are great intentions, because ultimately it's an allowing of the other person to most fully express themselves and share what's important to them. So that is a very powerful intended outcome. Now, I also have 4 tips for soulful talking. Okay, something I've done a lot of over the years, and I'm here chatting away, but I'm working on more soulful talking in my life. And one of the things that I highly recommend is you be conscious of your flow of your talking. In other words, your rhythm. You're moving along really fast. I'm talking about all this, or you slow down a little bit, or you mix it up a little bit. Maybe your volume is higher. Maybe it's lower. Maybe it's softer. Maybe you just pause and hold the moment of your voice. Very powerful tool to communicate effectively. Now, you also want to be clear about your needs. In other words, you want to let the other person know that, hey, I only have 5 minutes, or you know what, I have some time here, but I'm not feeling well. Communicate your needs up front. That's a very powerful way to communicate. 3, that 3rd tip on soulful talking is about not taking it personally. Now, we know that that's some great wisdom. It's never about ourselves, okay? So when people are saying things that seemingly are pointing a finger, are trying to get, bait you into some other conversation or manipulate the conversation, it's not about you. So we don't fall into that place. And that's really important. And 4th, my 4th tip on soulful talking is to speak and communicate with the other person unconditionally. Be in a place where you are not attached to the outcome of the conversation. Very powerful. Be in a place that accepts the other person unconditionally. It doesn't matter what they're saying or doing, because you're accepting them. They don't have power over you, to control your thoughts, or to manipulate an outcome. But that is the case when you accept them unconditionally. Because once we start putting limitations on the other person, then all of a sudden they can overpower those limitations, and all of a sudden we become defensive. We shut down. We're not listening. We're not communicating. So those are my 4 tips for soulful listening and soulful talking. I hope that these tips will help serve you to find the most fulfilling relationships in your life, to communicate your heart's intent, to share your thoughts and ideas most effectively and powerful. These 4 tips, I promise you, will change your life if you practice them and you become very conscious of them. I encourage you to go to my website, adamhall.solutions, and you can check out my full blog and take a detailed look into all the things that I'm doing around soulful listening and talking. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you can get notified of all my new videos when they come out. Anyway, blessings, and may your happy trails be happier than ever as you soulfully listen and talk with one another. Be well.